Welcome to On Block Off Block by AeroCloud. On Block Off Block explores the exciting and ever-growing aviation industry with guests working in and with airports, and is hosted by AeroCloud CEO George Richardson.
In this episode, George speaks to Eduardo Valencia, the Chief Information Officer at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, about how he navigates complex problems, uses analogies to translate tech to business, and the challenges that come with managing large operations.
Eduardo, AeroCloud and MSP have been teammates for around 1 year. We handle check-in and departure passenger side at MSP, and we're very proud to do so. Eduardo, you are a very valued member of our customer advisory board, most recently post the England versus Spain Euros result. Both of us had a laugh at that last time we met in TPA. AeroCloud handles all your airline and makes sure that they operate as smoothly as possible through the check-in and departure process. We've actually known each other for some time right now, and I've been courting your airport for many years until we finally did business back in 2023. You've held the CIO position at MSP for 8.5 years, heading up one of the best and most invested teams I have come across at an airport with true firepower. One of only airports with a dedicated commitment not only to people, but in firepower budget and the ability to test for your own lab on site, which leaders from multiple disciplines and not necessarily aviation don't necessarily have the luxury of. You and your team are extremely commercial in the way you think, and your vendors are very, very proud to be working with you. We had a fallout back in 2022, if you recall, over a solution that I could not service and a few professional choice words at PTE in person, but we got our relationship back on track in 2023, where we've worked very closely to deploy the new CUP solution at MSP. Your feedback along with your team is incredibly brutal, but also your team includes some of the best minds I've managed to work with, including Chris and others. The exceptionally brutal and honest feedback has been very valued to our customer advisory board. So thank you very much. Welcome to the On Block Off Block podcast, Eduardo.
Thank you, and just really welcome the opportunity of being here.
Great, brilliant. Well, let's get straight into it. So what is it about large and complex problems that you like solving?
You know, that they're large and complex. I think that there's a certain challenge that I think I personally get in solving puzzles. I don't do puzzles. I don't play video games. I don't necessarily challenge myself in kind of normal ways, except of trying to unpack problems, see the objectives, see if I can repack them together and get to an outcome. I remember being, and this may sound a little bit like bragging, but it's what came to mind. So I'd rather kind of tell you the story. I remember doing my undergrad studies, and I did. Actually, I'm not a technologist like at all, and it's going to come through if you ask me technical questions. But I may tell you I just don't know. I'm an economist. Sometimes I introduce myself as a recovering economist, and I concentrated on actually price theory and econometrics, and which had a lot of math. So I had to do a lot of math in undergrad and a lot of economics. And as I was doing math, I forget the name of the course, but it was like differential equations or something on the advanced side. These were very difficult problems that you had to solve, in which at that level of math, they kind of give you a tooling and they set a problem that doesn't sound like it's mathematical and say, solve for it. And you sometimes think like a week on saying, okay, do I do it this way? Do I do it that way? You rack your brain, and then you end up kind of solving you put all the assumptions and the theories and the way that you try to solve it. And I remember turning those in and getting that at one point, I got a letter from the math department saying, listen, you don't solve problems all that efficiently, but very uniquely. We've never seen that path. There is a more efficient path, but that was really interesting. You should really consider mathematics. At that time, I said, I got enough student debt. I'm gonna go into the market. But it goes back to your question. What is it about problem solving? Is trying to unpack an issue and trying to think of what is critical and what isn't about how to solve it, and being able to put it back together. It's just very, very rewarding. And then in tech delivery, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of good practice that you just need to kind of execute and apply. And there's a lot of problems that at the end of the day is really understanding what is the essence of it and how can you contribute from a tech perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in your role as well, there's so many stakeholders, not just to please, but also delight. One, namely being the passenger. Having the ability to see the complete end to end must be a strategic advantage.
Yeah, you bet. And there's, I've been with the airport 8.5 years, but in technology delivery for 20 and change really a long time. And since I'm not technical, I was not on the delivery, not the keyboard guy, but always sort of looking at things from a capability perspective. And I remember early in my years that there used to be a lot of sort of debate and discussion between the business side of the house and the technology side of the house. And it was all about making sure that we had alignment. And it's still sort of on the radar for certain organizations, certain verticals. But somewhere along the way, sort of business leadership realized, well, these tech folks are not just about fulfilling and fulfillment elements. This is not just an ordering system. We don't just decide what we want. We go to order it and they deliver it. But if they are at the table, if they're kind of seeing the problem end to end, if they understand the business outcomes, the objectives, the strategy of an organization, they're going to go in their own little corner and think of ways by which they can apply tech to the big picture. And they're going to, words that right now we think are normal, innovate and digitize and re-engineer the way we do things to accomplish the objectives, perhaps via different, and this is where the economist comes out, different factors of production, right? So being at the table, seeing that entire journey, not being dedicated to landside or airside or operations or whatever functional area within an airport, but taking a step back and looking at it all and looking at your enabling legislation and being able to read the airline contracts and understand what our stakeholders really want, and knowing that at the end of the day, it's all about facilitating that journey, both outbound, inbound, and cross, allows us to really have perspectives that are quite unique, because a lot of the other business units kind of look at their slice and they say, oh, I stop right here, right? And when I finance the new capital program, I'm done, and I move on to the next finance challenge. And the capital folks are saying, well, I'm about building, delivering, and expanding, but I'm not about operations. I'm really about operations, and then what side of it, land side or air side or something in between. And the glue a lot of times is the tech side, on the tech side at the table at the right level in order to actually see across it and be able to augment it. And what I tell the team is support, which is the fulfillment element, enable the thinking about how can we do things differently in order to really get to a different set of outcomes and a different value proposition. So pretty cool that the industry's come a long way to include, I report to the CEO, the same level as the operations person, finance person, legal person. That's who's at the table facing and seeing any and all challenges in order to actually be better at what we do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the early large roles that you held was COO of the state of Minneapolis, right?
Yeah, it's actually the state of Minnesota, and it's CTO. I read that on the notes. I'm sorry, I should have probably sent it your way. So I was the chief technology officer for the entire. It's called the executive branch. Think of it as the unit of government of the state. It has kind of the division of the legislative, the executive, which reports to a governor, and then the judicial. Obviously, it's the same sort of separation of roles. On the role of the executive, which at the federal level is the president, the governor of the state has what they call cabinets. The cabinets relate to things like public safety and parks and labor and so on. One of them is technology. And I have the enormous pleasure of serving in the CTO role, not the CIO, not the appointee, not the political role, but the execution of the entire consolidation of all IT at the state of Minnesota, which is, if you think about it, it's a completely different kind of level of operation, $500 million operating, 2,000 employees serving 29 agencies with 2,000 employees for a $36 billion operation. So had the opportunity of getting a lot of problems. We started the problems, a lot of problems and a lot of challenges that we need to solve to actually create that operating arm of IT at the state and fulfill that role as the CTO.
What I was coming onto that as well is that's massively complex, effectively, and
Yes.
that's a conduit role, requires high EQ. Which was a gentleman very kind to give me some of his time to sort of reference some of these questions before we spoke, said that you have an innate ability to zoom in and then zoom out. So understand effectively large, complex problems from the detail out and then communicate them to the senior stakeholders that need to make the decisions with reference to budget, for example. Which, if you look at, your measure of success is passenger experience, passenger safety, revenue. You've got a lot more measures of success than, say, I have in a commercial entity. And the ability to zoom in and zoom out is really difficult. I know that firsthand myself. So Is there any things that tips or tricks you've learned along the way to have that ability to understand the problem's root cause and then zoom back out and communicate it at the senior level? Or is that just the way that your brain works and it's just as a consequence of working incredibly hard?
Yeah, it's less on me and more on, I don't know if there's any trick to it. I do think that, at the end, at the core of sort of what my role and many of my colleagues and many of my team players do the same thing. At the core of what we do is, and I know hopefully this doesn't sound overly simplistic, is translate, right? I translate business needs into technology components and vice versa. I have to be able to translate into business folks what technology challenges we may have or what we may not have. I happen to do that via analogies. I use analogies extensively for just about everything. They relate to people. It makes sense. Sometimes they're imperfect, but they get to the essence of the issue. And if you think about analogies, it can be understood by both sides, right? But when we translate, sometimes the translation is you understand the benefit of, I don't know, converged infrastructure and that you're able to kind of convey it back and forth. Sometimes you just don't know. So you got to dive and you have to be comfortable in diving. You have to be comfortable in diving and recognizing that you just like in physical diving, you dive into all of a sudden a reality that you don't know, and you got to recognize that you don't live, I don't know, 100 feet below water, right? So that whole reality is going to be quite surprising and quite interesting. You just have to then pick up the things that you need in order to get back up to surface and be able to translate it back. And there's I don't know if it's an old saying or how it really goes, but you just have to find out enough until you can make a decision and then move on. And then being able to dive back out and ask the right questions and sort of immerse yourself in the right level of reality to move the conversation over. A lot of times it's just instinct. A lot of times you are wrong and you have to be okay with making the wrong calls and positioning yourself to be strategic enough to then be able to pivot and move along. So no tricks. The only suggestions I would give is if you dwell on decisions or not making a decision as a decision in and of itself, right? So it's not about being cavalier, but the second that you get more information that you need in order to make a call, you're probably wasting time and cycles on that opportunity. And that's important. And then it is really critical to be able to understand on any issue, no matter how complex or simple it is, what's important, what isn't, that concentrate on what's important and be able to kind of sort out what's noise and what's signal and how to pay attention to the things that matter the most. All of us are way overcommitted, and it's picking that's important, that isn't. It's a little bit of what you develop over time and get that ability to
absolutely. Yeah, and funny enough, one of those stakeholders is the members of the public. What you do as the airport has a direct effect on local economy, and you are also in the public eye. When you talk about and delve into that sort of commercial end-to-end translating mindset that you have of the CIO, do you think that reflects negatively on your ability to trial and error and to fail? Because Tarek described you as very entrepreneurial, and I would relate to that myself as being CEO and founder of my company. But I don't have the public looking at my every move effectively. So do you think that in somewhat blurs the lines of that entrepreneurial spirit or suppresses the lines of that entrepreneurial spirit? Or do you welcome that challenge, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that in kind of public sector in general, you've got that additional layer of, I'm going to call it responsibility, that a lot of times is sort of seen as, it can be a burden because I would kind of simply described it as, you're told no matter what role and what function you may do, that at the end of the day, this is not your resources that you're allocating, right? You're allocating somebody else's resources. This is the public resource, and therefore you should be careful about the kind of bets you make, and that stifles innovation and stifles the whole entrepreneurial element of it is removed due to the fact that if you think about it, it's just a risk proposition. Is just that you place bets in order to advance in value, but you may have some losses. That's the whole essence of it. I would argue that having worked in kind of public sector for most of my career and having seen sort of different elements of that burden, the aviation industry, at least the airport authority that I work on with is I would say one of the most minimally organizations that I've worked at. Why? Because first of all, it is at the end of the day not pure play public money. We're not funded by taxes. Our financial model is based on fees, and fees that are volunteer, that they're not enterprises that operate in our facility that give us a certain amount of fees. Airlines that operate here, they're not forced to do so or mandated to do so. They do so willingly. And same thing with what I would call the public that consumes the services we do. So the revenue side of the house is not based on an imposition. It's based on a value proposition of travel, which allow the organization to, I think, be much more entrepreneurial. It's not just me, is the organization. We look at our function, we look at ways by which we can improve it, and we place bets to do that in a more I want to say aggressive way, entrepreneurial way, in order to accomplish those outcomes. I just think I follow my part in doing so. I think that an element to this is being comfortable with being wrong, and at the same time being logical about how you're making your decisions. When we decided to work with AeroCloud, it was not a coincidence that we chose a certain parameters that you guys were able to meet in order for us to make that move, right? And those parameters, some folks may find them perhaps too risky. When I arrived, we had a lot of cloud strategy and a lot of life cycle thinking of mainline IT that we wanted to see in our core airport systems. And a lot of that, quite frankly, George, was just not around, right? And so did we place a entrepreneurial sort of bet in going, for example, with your company or your solution set? Yes, but was it in line with a strategy that we thought would put us in a better position to actually be successful? Yes. So we placed that bet, and we were, in this case, fortunate that is all paying out. And in many other cases it has as well. In many cases we had to, within a year, say that's not working, let's move somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And let's delve into a little bit of the complex challenges around airports specifically then, and relate what you said with the key learning there being the translation element of it. What is it about airports that drew you in? Because you didn't have a role in airports, I believe, before. Airports were probably a business unit of the state, correct? And you got dragged in that way. What is it that was fascinating about them?
Yeah. So I just to correct the fact that, in the US, and I know you know this, but there's like about, in my simple mind, like 3 different models of airports. We are an authority, which means that we're actually not a branch of the state. It's not the Department of Aviation. We've got to get a little technical sort of enabling legislation that defines us as a public corporation. So we're a corporation that the public has created, but is not part of any kind of other unit of government. Some other colleagues are not. That's in the U.S. called an authority. Sometimes you're part of an aviation department, or sometimes you may be private, right? So in this first setting, when I got the call, I wish I had like an incredible story for you on how well researched and intentional I was about pursuing an aviation career in IT. But that would not be true. So I was working as the state CTO, and I took a phone call from our governing body. Basically, I report to a CEO, reports to the board. The board had a member. They were looking for a new CIO. They had a new CEO that came in with a modernization, digitization strategy. And I had just like I think like normally happens, like I had worked with that particular individual. That individual, his name is Rick King. He happened to be the CIO of Thomson Reuters at that time. And I had worked with him on a number of initiatives from the state side. He knew what I could do, and he knew what I had done sort of a completely major scale. And they needed a practice, George. They had no practice. They had the tail end of a CEO that for 30 years had been absolutely incredible for this organization, but had not invested in digital. And they wanted to invest in digital, wanted to create a practice. I took a phone call. I actually said, no, I'm not interested in that. Doesn't seem challenging enough, believe it or not. I just thought that's one slice. Right now I deal with all the federal programs, right? And then he persisted, sent me some data, mostly talking about entrepreneurial. He sent me the balance sheet, and I looked at the economics, and I'm like, and you and I invest in IT? And they said, yep. So I did my math, pulled back my economics and my master's of technology sort of finance books, and I thought, this can be really interesting, and dove in. And it's been
super cool,
an awesome journey ever since.
Yeah, I mean, that's really funny. I had the CIO of Swissport, the world's largest ground handler, on the podcast as well. And he was saying that when he was assessing a move to Swissport, that he asked for the PL first to see what the appetite for growth and the appetite for opportunity was. So maybe that's another thing to look at for CIOs, right?
You do. I mean, think now in a point in my career in which you get to do a good work. You do good work and it gets noticed, and then you attract a lot of attention by folks. And I look at sort of the incredible benefits of what I have in this organization, and you look at ways by which you can be significant. None of us want to be in work where we don't get things done. Go back to you like problem solve. You got like accomplishing. You don't have to be a winner in everything, but you want to move the ball, and move the ball means being a support and enabling the organization to a different level of maturity. Is not an exit strategy and an entrance strategy. So you want to be in a place where you can contribute, and to that, a lot of times requires resources. And if your job is going to be choked on resources or reporting to what I would call the cost side of the house versus the enabling ROI type conversations to the growth side of the house, it's a different job. You need to do both, and you need to make sure that you can support and enable, and you have to earn that capability of being at the table. But if it's a completely different role, depending on the financial posture of the organization, the growth posture of the organization, the talent or son of talent that you may have in different roles, and we all want to accomplish at the end of the day, and that was a big part of it. I didn't know a lot of those things, but the opportunity of getting into a kind of brown state with the right resources to create a practice was incredibly attractive. And now we want to, we've got 8 years. We've got a really solid sort of capability maturity model, level 3 across, created a lot of capability. I don't necessarily want to talk about them unless you need to, but kind of what you would call the normal, modern, non-industry specific tech practice. And now we want to take it to the next level, right? We want to see how can we squeeze that in a way that it can be more efficient, mean more things. Can we position the organization to do things differently and become even more customer centric?
Absolutely. Great segue into my next question, which is, you've got some great people working under you in that team. And I genuinely mean that. I mean, the lab at MSP is awesome. All the vendors want to work with you, which is a strategic advantage for you commercially as well as an airport. It's a great segue into what sort of superpowers do you look for when you're hiring those great people, and what can you teach others about what to look for in hiring those people?
Yeah, good question, because there's so much written on this, and I don't profess to have a formula or recipe for it, but you do perform at the level that your team can perform, and your team, by the way, and I know that this is going to sound maybe a little too positive on our relationship, but your team, particularly depending on the strategy you follow, which we are a COTS solution and integration solution strategy, where we integrate market leading solutions. We're really good at gluing them together and put them into market quickly. We don't build systems, we consume systems. And that's why we look for attributes of consumption that are going to be as agile as possible. So our team is not just the team that we've got as individuals that work here, but the extension of our enabling partners, and that's really the way that we think about our vendors and our suppliers and our partners. So there's I don't have a formula, except that I could tell you that I think of my entire team. I'm looking sideways just to see if I can remember factually. Sometimes if I make a mistake, it's directionally correct. I think 85% of my team has got no aviation background. They came in. Well, first of all, we've almost tripled the footprint from the organization that I came in. And when you look at the functional needs associated with running a modern IT organization, there is the aviation component of it. The business side of it is not that unique. It's also not an industry that is difficult to communicate what is it that we do, because everybody consumes it. The tech delivery, it can be very what we call mainline IT, and all my leadership come from elsewhere. They're really good at rationalizing applications, or they're really good at running PMOs, or they're really good at reducing risk via cybersecurity practices and controls, or they're very good at infrastructure and operations, right? And we apply that to the business function that we do. In this case, it's aviation, and voila. And a lot of that is has been part of it. So we can teach people airports. Is a lot more difficult to teach airports good mainline IT practices. So we
100%
approach
agree.
it that way. Then as it relates to sort of recruiting and retaining and then really inspiring talent, I think what inspires me is what's going to inspire them, kind of like a clear vision. Where are we going? People want to know that. They can subscribe to it or not, but at least it's clear that they've got the resources to be successful to do so. They're going to be supported to do that, and that they can get things done. They can accomplish wins. And if you keep that, and people feel that they can contribute no matter at what level, and we are, and I mean this, team members, we all have different roles, but we don't work for each other. We work with each other in order to do our piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
People stay and they contribute and they give it their all.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I mean, when I entered into looking at this market before deciding to come in, I mean, there's, I think 85%, 90% of our employees are not from aviation background as well, which is just crazy, right? And obviously you need the people that have that core understanding, but the naivety of the people that don't is a massive superpower to see the business through a completely different lens, or the industry is through a different lens. So I couldn't be in more support of that. Another good segue is you certainly don't sugarcoat any feedback. And I think as a vendor to the airport and a vendor to yourself, beholden to, the deal that we have together, is that time saving on your behalf because of your busy schedule, or is that forcing vendors to innovate and actually is a supportive measure that you provide to me through not sugarcoating any feedback?
Maybe something in between. I think clarity in objectives and expectations is I mean, I don't profess to have it completely dialed up, but I think we need clear, direct, respectful, and appropriate conversations. And in that, if we lose too much in translation, either because things are not said or they're not clear, a lot of times it's about this clarity piece that people can't really articulate. What is it that I really need from you? It's just back to that point of what's important, what isn't, and what's important. I'm going to try to make it clear. I'm going to try to make it clear 15 times in order to be crystal on, do you get what I need? And then can you deliver it? And if so, I'm going to hold you accountable to it. I think it's incumbent upon us to be really as clear and as direct as we can with the underlying respect and appropriate delivery, right? And hopefully that resonates with you. It's I'm tying the two together. You were talking about sort of the team members and how do you keep them engaged and how do you put them together. So when I hire at least my direct reports, and I got 4, I go through all the kind of process of getting them talent sorted. And when I get to my finalists, I take an entire day to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to show you my world from your perspective. And I need to be clear, exactly, crystal clear, that you understand where we've got problems, where we've got challenges, where we've got execution elements. Let's make it really, really clear so there's no surprises for you. It's difficult to absorb in one day, but it's the same thing, the same direct conversation with anyone that is going to be a key component of your success, I think is absolutely necessary in order to not waste time.
100% agree. And one of the things I thought that really stood out from my interview with Derek was you have, a duty of care for always wanting to do a proper job. And I think that if you're looking for that in your team as well, and your direct reports have that in droves, then the airport and that function will be incredibly successful. And if then you can translate that back into the people at your level, you'll get proper funding. That means that you can deliver a proper service. If you deliver a proper service, that means more revenue, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think people fully understand how important airports are. And I've been saying this for ages. Like, if your airport starts to fail, your local economy starts to fail. The throughput of an airport has an impact on education, on medical, on financial, local economies, people, doing dry cleaning, all the way through to people running football teams, sports teams, ski teams, ice hockey teams, et cetera, et cetera. They're so pivotal for local economy. And that came across as, when I first met you, and also when I was getting your references, because I think that is something that MSP does really, really well.
Yeah, you're right. And, we measure it, George. I mean, we put a bunch of economists that get together and do econometric models. I remember kind of writing them in this day. They do location quotient analysis, blah, blah, blah. So they try to put a number of what we mean to the economy. I think it's in the 19 billion. I think it is. Hopefully I got that number right. And if not, we can correct it post recording, but it's on that kind of order of magnitude. And it's, if you think about it, it's that connective tissue. it's the enablement of travel, and that is got a business and a leisure component, and it's incredibly important to do it right. You also mentioned along the way it's difficult to convey. Sometimes it's just in the energy and drive that people have on. You really need people that are going to have the ultimate desire of doing a good job. It's just the way it is. We want to excel at what we do, and you can get the culture of trying not to over compromise, but to drive excellence, and that's an important attribute that becomes a cultural expression, and that mobilizes us all to do good at what we do, including at the individual level, at the partner level, and then as a system.
Agreed. It's true that you bulk all of your holidays together and become a ski instructor in the winter, right?
Unfortunately, it is.
So that drive to do a good job is really interesting. Can you tell us why you would do that? Because, you're a very successful exec of a very large organization that goes back effectively to being a ski instructor in the winter. What is it that fuels that, and how does it help you in your role at MSP?
Yeah, it is just to clarify, in case that's a little unclear. So I obviously have a full-time job, and I have a couple of part-time jobs. One of them is on the ski instructing side, and in order to do the ski instructing side, I have to do what they call seasonal peaks. So all the major resorts have peak times that are around the holidays, if you want to think about it. And they provide folks that have a lot of experience this seasonal peak opportunity, which means that you sign a contract with them for basically 20 days, which include weekends and so on, bundled in approximately over the holidays, and then usually a couple of sprints in the spring. And what I do is I take time off from work to go and jump and get in a uniform. And coincidentally, I just asked my boss today about that windows, because they're all programmed. So I give it to them and I say, yeah, go do your thing. And then I tell my administrative support person, who is just the glue of my calendar, I say, hey, please book these up. And then she always tells me, you're the only person that I know that takes vacation to go to do a different job. So, and it resonated with me when she told me the first time that I did this. But in why I've been doing it for years, I think, first of all, because I love skiing. Second of all, because I really like teaching. Third, because I hate the gym, and this is a really good way to stay fit, kind of selfishly. I think fourth is, it is such a departure to be from a role that I've got that is kind of a byproduct of a lot of effort and a roadway of a career, let's call it that. And then you jump off of this and you get immersed into a completely different industry in which you put a uniform and you have a name tag and you put a helmet on, and then you teach kids how to ski, right? And your supervisor may be an 18-year-old that got assigned that full time, and you're nobody. You are the ski instructor, right? And it's really interesting to see. I've worked for Vail Resorts for a long time. Right now I'm with Aspen. And it's beautiful to see an organization from that lens, from the lens of, I just started, I am the seasonal person. The seasonal folks are not, let's just say that they're not regarded as the pivotal resource for the organization, because there's full-time people, and there's full-time people that is all they do, and they do it around the clock. And you become sort of another cog in the wheel, and it masks with a particular uniform and completely anonymized from all the benefits of having been invested in a career in a long time. And it's grounding. It's beautiful to see. It gives you a different perspective. And then at the end of the day, 9 o'clock rolls around and I get 5 kids. Last year I had 5 kids for one particular week that were all had never seen snow in their life. They were all from immigrants from Cuba that lived in Florida, and they went from the, I don't know how this even feels in my hand, to skiing and sliding, as we call it, at the end of the 5 days, and their lives were changed forever, right? And you can't put a number on that. And then you wash up and do email in the morning, early in the morning, and catch up in the evening, and spend a week, get exhausted, do the exercise for probably 3 months worth, and fly back and get onto a board meeting on Monday. And there's nothing like it.
That's great. We both have a love for speed, which we've exchanged lots of notes on. Enduro, motorcycling is a huge part of your life, a massive sport in your native country of Spain. What about operating at speed has taught you. There's lots of decisions that have to go through your brain to operate an enduro bike. Can we delve into that a little bit and why that's important?
Sure. Yeah, but I'm going to disappoint you because it's actually, I choose paths where I cannot go too fast because I got a couple of accidents that the common denominator was speed.
That could be one of the learnings. There you
go. And
I've not always operate.
The scars to show it. So I decided, because I've been doing that for also a few years, I am on the skiing side, I'm not the highest level certification, but one dimension below that. Very technical, very, very understand that sport really, really well. You need to. It takes years of both training and then dedication to really understand biomechanically what really is happening and what the snow and ski interaction is really doing in order to really unpack it and be able to teach somebody. You really understand what they're doing and what they need to do in order to be successful. On the enduro side, I'm the opposite. I'm like, I just ride. I was never taught, and I've done some courses, but nothing all that extreme. So I found out quickly that speed wasn't my enemy. So I picked trails that are very, very challenging, cow paths we call them, in order to make sure that there's just no physical way to go fast on them, but they're very technically challenging. They can be exhausting. I do that in the summer. So that, again, the theme is I hate the gym. So in the winter, I do skiing, and in the summer, we go out with some friends to go ride trails. There is some speed from time to time. If there's a theme that I also do like about that is while I'm skiing, I can think. While I'm riding, I probably can't. It's only the trail and the bike and the challenge and the exhaustion. It's just exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
And that if you're not there, you're on the ground. So you better be paying attention. And that I really enjoy. It's completely, the world shuts off. You don't even kind of even hear, because you're so concentrating onto what's right in front of you.
Perfect.
It's fun stuff.
Let's flip back to one area. You have deep expertise now in aviation and the operation of an airport. As you suggested, you're across a lot of functions as well, and at the table with every function. What area could be or should be disrupted next in aviation technology or airport technology, in your opinion? Or where can vendors like myself apportion some time?
Yeah, a good question. And I'm gonna punt a little bit on it, because I'm gonna tell you that unfortunately it kind of depends. And then you're like, okay, it depends of sort of who you are and what market you're in. I think what I mean by that is that the answer would be different in a different geography and under a different kind of business model, because the business models that I described before, this sort of authority or part of a city or part of a municipality, it's kind of relatively unique to the U.S. and then the majority of the rest of the world, they're private enterprises or they're, I don't want to call it for profit, but they've got a much more clear sort of value proposition as the revenue and the financial value that they can create. But in the U.S., if I were to pick, hey, where is this going? What is the next wave? And this is really my opinion, my perspective, not necessarily grounded in a lot of fact. I think we have an enormous and great opportunity to do two things. One is a continuation. I'll circle that one to that one because it's less revolutionary. But the one that I think is emerging and ready for the picking is automation. I think that the ability and where the technology is leading with the improvements in machine learning, and I hate to say AI, but the traditional AI elements of it and the connectivity benefits or connectivity improvements that are taking place in our facilities, combined with robotics, I think create an opportunity for automation and for autonomous, call it autonomous everything, that we're right at the early stages of it. If this is actually going to be one of the topics that we want to talk about at the beginning of next year in the context of sort of setting up the agenda for the North America CIO Association, is one of the topics that I'm introducing with some folks like Samuel Ingalls, who I know you know, and we both believe that the right combination of the right, what I would call connectivity backplane, and the right robotics in the middle with that AI capability can provide for automation and autonomous activity that can revolutionize the efficacy and then the efficiency of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%.
That's a read. And when you go, okay, well, how is that relevant to the U.S. market? You're just seeing it in other markets, and you're seeing it that's how problems are being solved. That's one. The second one is a little bit of the old news, but I think that we have a revitalization with some of the work that colleagues are doing in this space, which is, I think we started 8 years ago. We began the journey of customer centrism, really putting that passenger in the middle and passenger in the center, and stop being sort of, as airports, eliminating we're just a landlord of facilities where activity takes place for people that we don't know and we don't manage. Our partners do that, to really understanding that customer and starting to shape that journey. The difference is that once you understand that, you can start shaping it. You can start shaping it by being very intentional about how that experience is going to be. I think we're on the early stages of that. I think that it's still with one hand that I would count what I would call credible customer relationship management programs that are in the top 20 airports in the US, that as they start understanding that George is in my facility on any given day because you've booked a parking transaction that I can actually see, and I can put you into a wait time experience that is going to be, again, managed, not necessarily better or worse, but it's going to be managed. And I can give you I don't give you, but I can give you the opportunity to make choices differently. And I can interact with those airline partners in a different way by which it can be more seamless. I think we've got a lot of value to unlock in what I would call the customer experience. So those would be the two: the movement into automation and autonomous activity, which is the combination of robots, connectivity, and analytics, AI in the middle, both traditional and generative. And then that revitalization of understanding the customer in order to start, I don't want to say controlling, shaping the experience. I think we're at the beginning stages of that still, and super excited about the work we do with that, and the way that we can use video and video analytics to understand those journeys, and passenger passenger journeys become not just about counting how many people are waiting for TSA, but understanding the full transactions and where they go and where they come from, and how are their journeys, how can they be optimized.
Brilliant. Well, one thing that stood out to me as we sort of wrap up here is how much you value your family. That's one thing that stood out to me when we had dinner at the customer advisory board that one time, and therefore I can see that in your team. So I just wanted to say that's a big thing for me to you. Combining that with the perfect mix of commercial and private sector experience, the deep end-to-end translation of problems through stakeholders for mutual gain and reward. Thank you very much for your feedback, your brutal, honest feedback, non-sugar-coated feedback at our sessions. You're an incredibly valued customer. Thank you for sharing your insights, and I hope others can learn from this as much as possible. If anyone was to want to get in touch with you, do you LinkedIn? What's the best way to do that, or do you not want to be kept in touch with?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I try to make fun of myself saying what I don't know can fill up a warehouse, right? Anyone that may be open to exchanging ideas and or finding ways by which we can collaborate. We're a network, and it is very little I do and a lot that I glue, and they can reach out. LinkedIn is active. I think that the whole thing is open for anyone to reach out. So I welcome any interaction with any suggestions or challenges or opportunities to ski at Aspen or ride bikes at any time.
There you go. Great. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're super busy. So thanks again, Eduardo.
Absolutely. Appreciate the invitation.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to On Block, Off Block by AeroCloud. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review, and remember to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with future episodes. On Block, Off Block is hosted by George Richardson and produced by Alex Greaves.